California's economy and housing market is crashing right now. Both home prices are going down and people are leaving the state in droves. You can see this evidenced on this list of the top 15 cities with the biggest home price declines in America. You could see a metro like Oakland has a 24% decline in the last 9 months. San Francisco has a 17% decline. Sacramento has a 12% decline. Anaheim and LA are over 10%. And so why are home prices going down so fast in California, everyone, faster than everywhere else in America? And the reason is simple. It's because there's still lots of people fleeing California. The California exodus is still occurring, and that's depriving the state of home buyer demand and causing existing sellers of homes to have to cut the price and have to cut the price by more. And you could see the situation here with the migration issue, particularly in a metro like Los Angeles, everyone. On this graph, we're looking at the last 30 years of migration history in the Los Angeles metro area. And this includes LA and Orange County. And what do you see here? In 2022, the US Census Bureau says LA lost 126,000 people. Now, that was 1%. It lost 1% of its population, which for 1 year is very large, especially after losing population for multiple years in LA. So LA is an area that's losing lots of people still, and that explains why home prices are going down, as it does in a place like San Diego, everyone. I was just in San Diego, and people there were telling me that people are moving to San Diego, but very clearly that's not true. We have about 4 to 5 years in a row now of a population exodus, of migration out of San Diego. And so this is a housing market, I think, that's going to continue crashing over the next several years. Because the issues that California has in its economy and housing market are very fundamental. Not only have people been leaving, but they will likely continue to leave due to the issues that the state is still having, namely quality of life. I was just in California last week, and there's huge issues with homelessness. Even though also prices have come down in the housing market, it's just too expensive. And oh yeah, the local economy in California is getting smacked right now by a recession in the tech industry that looks like it's going to last multiple years. So if you're a home buyer in California and you're frustrated, maybe you're not seeing the amount of inventory you would like yet on the housing market, maybe you feel like prices haven't come down enough, I would encourage you to be patient, because things are going to get better for you. And things are going to get better, for a lot of home buyers in the metros in orange on this map. And metros in orange on this map, they're the ones, like in California, that have seen the biggest loss of people. The ones in orange here in California, but also if you go to the Northeast, in the Midwest, we've also seen huge losses of people in a metro like Chicago. The Census Bureau says we lost 1% of the population in Chicago last year. In New York, 1.1% of the population left, over 220,000 people. And so these areas in the Northeast and Midwest, they haven't really experienced the housing crash yet, but this migration data and the continued exodus of people from these areas suggests that they will experience the housing crash, or at least a correction, I should say, in home prices at some point. Now, what about the areas in blue on this map, everyone? The areas in blue are the ones that people are moving to, like in Phoenix. Phoenix had a 1.3% growth in population due to migration in 2022. If we go down to Florida, we can see a place like Lakeland had a 4% growth in population. So there's still some positive migration heading down to the south and heading down to the southwest. Now, here's where things get interesting. The natural conclusion that many draw by looking at that migration data in, say, Florida, is that Florida's housing market won't crash due to all the people moving there. I've seen that argument a lot. And I just got to warn you all, the fact that a state like Florida has had high migration the last couple years does not guarantee that it will continue to have high migration into the future. And that makes Florida's housing market a risky bet right now. And let me show you all what I'm talking about as far as that goes. If we go back here to the dashboard looking at the migration in different metro areas, I want to show you a metro like Tampa, Florida. and looking at the migration history in Tampa, and you can see, yeah, we've had a boom of people moving to Tampa over the last couple years. 67,000, in fact, in 2022, 2.1% growth. However, I want to point you to what happened in Tampa in the mid-2000s. We had a very similar increase in migration. In fact, in percentage terms, it was even higher than the current one. And then what happened, folks? Bam! The migration completely plummeted as the U.S. economy and housing market hit a recession in the late 2000s. We can see something very similar also occurred in Miami. Miami back then. Miami was always a high migration market, and then migration plummeted. And where's Miami today? Well, it added 30,000 people in 2022. That's very, very good. But a question to ask is, where is the migration in Miami going into the future? And my thought process here is that as the recession in 2023 gets worse, as interest rates continue to remain elevated, we're going to see migration trends start to normalize in America. We're not going to see all of a sudden people leave Florida, but we're going to see fewer people move in, potentially go back to what the more long-term level of inbound migration into Florida was. And conversely, I think we're going to start to also see fewer people leave California. Yes, there will still be people leaving due to the tech layoffs and quality of life, but it's not going to be quite as many. So I think in 2023 and 2024, you as a home buyer and investor should expect a normalization in migration trends in America, which means potentially that, this list here of the top migration gainer markets, these are the metros that gain the most people in 2022. In terms of people moving in. We could see Myrtle Beach was number one. Myrtle Beach added 5% to its population in 1 year due to inbound migration. I mean, that's huge. That's crazy. Lakeland added 4%. Cape Coral added 4%. Northport, Florida added 4%. Ocala, Port St. Lucie, Deltona, you can see it's really all Florida here, Spartanburg, and then Naples and Palm Bay. And so this explains kind of what happened in these housing markets over the last couple of years. But I don't think it's going to support these housing markets going forward. And one reason why is if you look at inventory. If you look at inventory growth and the number of homes for sale on the US housing market right now, where are the cities and where are the states where inventory is growing the most? That's a great question that you need to be able to answer as a home buyer trying to make a more educated decision about what the right time to buy is, especially in your city. And the trend we're seeing actually is that the metros with the biggest inventory gain were the ones with the highest migration in 2021 and 2022. Specifically, everyone, if I pull up ReVenture app here and we look at this map, which shows the areas with the biggest inventory increase, the areas in red, like a Nashville, like a Dallas, where inventory is up 200% over a year. We can see if we go down to Florida, in Lakeland, inventory is up 237% from where it was 1 year ago. So inventory in Lakeland has more than tripled. Inventory in Northport has almost quadrupled. And so we're seeing a trend actually where, the markets that people are leaving in the Northeast and Midwest have the lowest inventory increase, whereas the markets that people are moving to in the South have the highest inventory increase on the housing market. And so what does that suggest, everyone? That suggests that there's a reversion in migration trends occurring and that potentially maybe people are starting to get called back into the office. Maybe some of the people who moved to the South in 2021 and 2022 are now being told to get back to their job in Boston or New York or maybe in San Francisco. Some of these people are starting to move back, and these people would have been ones who purchased houses, so maybe they're having to sell their houses. That's one idea. The other idea is that with the tech downturn, a lot of these people who moved to the South and the Southwest were tech workers during the pandemic. Well, they're not feeling as confident in buying homes now due to layoffs. So that could be another reason. But actually, folks, there's a third thing going on here that I think you all need to be paying attention to. And that's just the cyclical nature of migration trends in America, particularly in a state like California. There's just periods where people leave, and then there's periods where people kind of move back and when they leave again. And let me show you what I'm talking about with that. So if we go back here to the migration dashboard and we let's pull up LA, because LA is a really interesting one to look at. Obviously a lot of you guys know LA's lost a lot of people over the last couple of years. But go back to the mid-2000s, everyone. It was a very similar situation in LA back then. 05 to 07, they lost about the same amount of people. Oh, and then go back to the early 90s in LA. They also lost a lot of people. So there's this kind of cycle in Southern California of people moving out, and then some have moved back in, and then home prices get too high and there's a recession and people move out, and then they move back in, and then there's a recession and home prices get too high and they move out again. And this is kind of a very predictable trend. We also see it in a metro like New York. Let's look at the migration trends in New York. You can see New York pretty much always loses people. So New York is always losing people, lost a lot during the pandemic. But again, there's these trends of New York losing people. It lost a lot in the mid-2000s. It lost a lot in the last couple of years. And I suspect it's probably going to, in the future years, get back to still losing people, but maybe not losing as many people going forward in a state like New York, which is going to have interesting implications on the housing market. So I think there's like a lag effect here. I think New York is going to start to feel the migration losses in its housing market this year in 2023. So things will get a little worse in New York. But then I think in 2024 and 2025, we'll see that the New York housing correction kind of slows down as people move back in. Whereas in the South, I think the South and the Southwest in the US housing market is going to have big issues, because the locals in, let's just say a state like Tennessee, let's just say in a metro area like Nashville, if I open up Reventure app here and we go to one of my favorite data points here on Reventure app, everyone, house payment as a percentage of median income. This is showing you how much the locals make compared to how much they need to spend on a house. And in Nashville, we can see here it's 42%. So on taxes, insurance, and mortgage interest, the local will need to spend 42% of their income to buy a house. Like, they can't afford that. A metro like Nashville or a metro like Orlando, where it's 44%, needs that consistent stream of inbound buyers in perpetuity to support what's going on in those housing markets. As does a place like Dallas, where the house payment as a percentage of median income is up to 40%. I mean, that's crazy. In Austin, it's 48%. And what's concerning is some of these metros in the South, in terms of affordability, are starting to look like these metros in California, where you see these 50%, 45% cost ratios. In Riverside, California, the typical family needs to spend 56% of their income on house payments. And so, it's no secret that the West Coast is really expensive. California is really expensive, and that's why lots of people have moved out, right? And that's why they moved to the cities in the South and the Southeast. But, there was a time period where, that kind of made sense, right? Like if I open up Nashville here on Reventure app and, look at the graph of house payment as a percentage of median income, we could see it was legitimately affordable in Nashville for a long time. Locals only need to spend 20% of their income on house payments. So, it made sense to move here and buy houses. It was cheaper. Now it's not. The South has lost its affordability advantage in many metro areas, and that's also another reason why the migration trends are likely to shift big time in coming years. Another thing to pay attention to, everyone, is the fact that this US Census Bureau migration data is advertised as being 2022 migration, but in reality, it tracks July 2021 to June 2020, what the migration is during that fiscal year, which at this point was 21 months to 9 months ago. That's what this migration data is tracking. It's on a huge lag. And so it's really not telling us what's going on right now, but we can kind of figure out what's going on right now by, again, looking at the inventory levels. And so if we go back to looking at for sale inventory on the Reventure app here, and let's just go to a market like Dallas, because I know I have a lot of you home buyers in Dallas who are saying, I see you in the comments, you're saying the market's crazy, it's just like it was last year, there's There's all these buyers moving in Dallas is what people say. Well, what's the inventory situation? In Dallas, there's now 13,000 homes on the market. A year ago, it was 4,200 homes on the market, right? And so while we don't really know what the migration statistics are right now in Dallas, I can tell you the fact that inventory has tripled year over year suggests that something has now changed in that local housing market. What's another metro that would be good to look at here in the South? How about Northport, Sarasota, which was a migration leader according to the US Census Bureau data? We can see home prices are still going up in Northport. That's good. But, all right, we had 1,100 homes on the market a year ago in Northport, Sarasota. Now we have 4,400. Still more work to do to get back to pre-pandemic levels, but that's a significant shift. A significant shift in how many homes are on the market. And another thing you'd want to consider is like how sellers are cutting the price. And this is actually a metric I really, really like here, price cut percentage. What share of sellers are cutting the price on the market as we speak? And this is, in a market like Northport, we can see 27% of sellers cut the price in February compared to only 6% a year ago. Another sign that this market has changed fundamentally and that very likely the migration statistics are going to look very different in a year. And make sure also, folks, give me some requests here in the comments section below for my channel members. One person's actually saying that they've seen price cuts plateau in Phoenix as the rate of new listings has decreased. So let's actually look at what's going on in Phoenix right now, everyone, because that's a housing market that's interesting. Prices were already down, let's just say 20% or 15% in Phoenix. Well, what are sellers doing in terms of price cuts? Well, folks, they're still cutting the price a lot in Phoenix. 34% of listings in February had a price cut compared to 8% a year ago, right? And so we have 4 times as many price cuts this year compared to last year. And so one thing I want you guys to watch out for, if you're in a housing market where you are seeing more buyers and you think that maybe the market's turned, where there's more buyers and prices are going to go back up, you should look at this data to verify what you're seeing. Because in Phoenix's case, I don't think prices are going to go back up. Maybe for a month or two, they'll go back up. But the fundamentals of that housing market have not changed when you look at the underlying data. And I know there's a lot of realtors out there, especially. I see them here in Nashville, where I live now. I go to open houses, and the realtors tell me in Nashville that everything is now gone back to the way it was a year ago. Like there's no more housing crash, and it's as big a bubble as it was a year ago is what I'm hearing realtors say in terms of how crazy the market is. But, when I hear that, I say, all right, let's go to Nashville and let's see. Well, is that true? Is what's going on in that housing market now the same as a year ago? No, folks. So a year ago, 9% of sellers cut the price in Nashville. This year, 26% of sellers cut the price in February. If we look at inventory, there's now 6,000 homes on the market in Nashville compared to 1,500 homes a year ago. And so, folks, one of my missions, just before I get back to California here in a second, I just want to say, one of my missions here with Reventure App and with this channel is to make sure you guys as home buyers have the data at your fingertips, because there's so much misinformation and propaganda being perpetrated in the housing market right now in 2023. Like, home buyer demand is literally at its worst level in 20 to 25 years, but we still have people trying to say that there's like a housing boom going on, there's a recovery occurring, and it's just not true, everyone. It's not showing up in the data. Now, there is one thing that is showing up in the data, though, and that's that sellers are still stubborn. So, the buyers are gone from the market, but sellers are stubborn. So we are seeing sellers in certain markets, like in the market like San Diego right now. They're not listing as many properties in San Diego, and that's causing the inventory in San Diego to be lower than it should be. So if we open up San Diego here and look at the historical inventory levels, what do we got? So, we could see inventory is up in San Diego a little bit, but it's still pretty far below, let's just say where it was in 2017, 2018. There was 4,500 homes on the market back then. Now there's only 2,300 homes on the market in San Diego. And so this is interesting, right? Because inventory in San Diego is still low, but prices have gone down by about 10%. It's a similar situation in Anaheim and Los Angeles. Prices have gone down 11 to 12%, while the inventory is not what it was at pre-pandemic levels. And so what that suggests is that we actually don't need inventory to even get back to pre-pandemic levels to see price declines, because we have a much more condensed, smaller housing market right now. There's fewer buyers, there's fewer new listings, there's less inventory overall, but it's actually in better balance than people think, just because mortgage rates are so high, home prices are so high that most people can't afford it. And really, to just give some evidence here. Oh, okay, hold on. I got a request, everyone. I got a request. Robin actually has a question. And she says, cash buyers are being selective on what they're buying because they don't want to get stuck. All right, so this is another interesting thing to talk about, everyone. Cash buyers. We are seeing somewhat of an increase in cash buyers to begin 2023, because they're the ones not as impacted by mortgage rates. And so what I'm seeing in certain markets, especially here in the South, is that, some investors and cash buyers have come back in, and that's causing maybe a slight month-over-month or seasonal depletion in inventory. And so, that's something that's a bit concerning. But my overall thesis is, if the regular home buyer, who comprises 70% of home sales, is locked out of the market's going to go down. The cash buyer or the speculative buyer, they might be able to come in for a month or two or a couple months, but they're not going to fundamentally change the direction of the housing market. All right, everyone. What other markets here do you want me to look at, everyone? Someone's talking about Charlotte, and they're saying that the new builders are still increasing the prices in Charlotte for new homes. And so let's take a look at Charlotte and see what's going on in that housing market. First thing we should look at here is inventory. What's going on in Charlotte? This is a market I thought would have crashed by now. I got to be honest. I thought Charlotte would have crashed by now. We could see the inventory is up 137% year over year. So that's good. Inventory is more than doubled. But we can see it's still not where it was before the pandemic. So inventory is still probably 20% lower than it should be in Charlotte. What are they doing on price cuts? What are sellers doing on price cuts? Well, 18% of listings had a price cut in February. That's okay. That's not very good, actually, because before the pandemic it was 22 to 25%. So that comment about builders not cutting the price or increasing the price, it's backed up by the data. So we need to see in Charlotte this price cut share go up by more. We need to see the price cut share go up by more in the future, and that's how you'll know as a buyer that things are shifting more into your favor. All right, what about a request here for Memphis, everyone? I'm actually going to shift here to the graphs page on Reventure app so you can just really easily shift between different markets here in terms of all these data points. Memphis is an interesting one, Western Tennessee, because we can see price cuts have now gone up back to normal levels, which is good in Memphis. And then inventory, all right, so inventory has gone up a lot year over year, still kind of below a bit where it was during the pandemic. So this is like a mixed story, but I think Memphis is a market where prices will decline given the increase in seller price cuts that we're seeing here. All right, folks, we got another request here. Let's see. I got a request for Jacksonville. Someone's saying cash buyers in the Jacksonville market are propping it up. Is that true? Well, we can see price cuts in the Jacksonville market have gone up by 4x in the last year. So much more normal level of price cuts. What about inventory? Inventory has also gone up a lot in Jacksonville. And so judging by the increase in inventory and the increase in price cuts in Jacksonville, maybe in the short term you guys are seeing, cash buyers are propping it up. Jacksonville home prices will be going down, and I think they'll be going down by a lot. It's one of the most overvalued housing markets in America. Additionally, the rental market in Jacksonville is crashing right now as well. Huge increases in rental vacancy rates, which is a big problem for all the investors that buy in Jacksonville. All right, everyone. Let's get a couple more requests here, but before I sign off, let's see, everyone. I'm going to do some California here because I need to cover some more California markets. What about Sacramento? How about Sacramento? Inventory. Not quite where we want it, really. I mean, inventory is up from where it was a year ago, but still about 30 to 40% below where it was pre-pandemic. And so we want to see more inventory on the Sacramento housing market. Now, again, though, folks, the low inventory has not stopped home prices from going down 12%. So the median sale price, according to Redfin, is down 12% from peak in Sacramento. So we have seen prices go down even without the inventory increase. And California is kind of weird or interesting in this respect. Its housing market acts almost more like a bond, in that it just kind of moves with interest rates rather than being moved with inventory. What about another market in California? Let's do Riverside. I was actually just in Riverside a couple days ago, filmed a couple shorts there that you guys are going to see soon. Well, inventory in Riverside has doubled. Good. Still below where it was in 2020 by about 20%. So we'd like to see more inventory in Riverside, but really what are the sellers doing? They're cutting the price by more, which is a positive sign. And one thing I'm projecting a bit in California over the next 6 months is that the situation is going to get worse. Because even if inventory is seasonally low, even if there's not enough new listings right now, I mean, folks, what do you think is going to happen as a 2023 recession gets worse and as tech layoffs continue to get worse and media layoffs? I mean, right now in California, the way it's affecting the market is those layoffs are reducing buyer demand. But eventually those layoffs are going to increase new listings. I mean, the sellers who are being stubborn and not listing their property right now or haven't in the last 6 to 9 months, I mean, that's great. Eventually, many of them will be forced to list their property. And the thing is, you do not need many sellers being forced to list the property before big issues result. And let me show you what I'm talking about with that, actually. I added a data point here to Reventure app. Let's see if I can find it, everyone. We got a lot of data points on here. Inventory as percentage of houses. This is a really interesting metric to look at. So what this metric does, if this map will load. All right. Let's load map. All right, it's loading. All right, what this metric does is it shows the amount of for sale inventory on the market divided by the total number of houses. And so in Riverside, California, we can see that the inventory percentage is 0.6%. There's 8,000 houses compared to 1.4 million owner-occupied homes. So 0.5% of all the homes are on the market at a given time. Now, you could view that a couple different ways. One person might say, well, that's such low inventory. But another way to think about that is like, well, wait a minute. What if 0.5% of homeowners in Riverside lose their job or get foreclosed on? Well, then all of a sudden inventory would double. And so these artificially low inventory levels that occurred in the pandemic, they've skewed the housing market in a very interesting way. And I don't think people are properly taking account of the risk factor of you basically don't need very much to go wrong in a certain city in California or a certain city in Florida or New York to all of a sudden have inventory go up way more than you can think. So I would encourage a lot of you, take a look at that inventory as a percentage of houses metric. It's pretty revealing. What are the areas in America that have the highest inventory levels overall? Well, it's a lot of stuff in the Mountain West. You can see here in Salt Lake City in Utah, we have around 1% of the houses are on the market at any given time. In Lake Havasu City in Arizona, 1.2% of houses are on the market at any given time. In Florida, Florida also has fairly high relative inventory levels of over 1%. And so, you could see actually the lowest inventory levels as a percentage of houses is in the Midwest and the Northeast. So you could see in actually a metro like Boston, only 0.2% of all the owner-occupied houses are on the market for sale right now, 0.2%. And I'm curious, what you all think about that. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing for the housing market, that low inventory percentage? All right, everyone, I'm going to take a couple more requests here. All right, I got some in rapid succession. Tanner wants to hear about Fort Myers, Cape Coral. So let's look at Fort Myers, Cape Coral. This is a place that got really hit hard by the hurricane. Let's see what's going on with price cuts. Well, sellers are now cutting the price on 27% of listings in Cape Coral compared to 8% a year ago. So 27% price cut share is normal. Like this is kind of normal according to data from Realtor.com. So that's good. It's positive movement, but it's not yet, where we're going to see prices crash. We've seen inventory go up by a lot. Inventory has tripled in Cape Coral over the last year, but still below where it was before the pandemic. So this is a market where we're seeing positive movement for you as a home buyer in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, but it's not yet at the point where we're going to see prices go down a lot like they have, say, in Austin. Just to give you guys like a point of comparison for what you would expect to see, for prices going down a lot. Well, in Austin, inventory tripled. It actually more than tripled, got back to normal levels, and then seller price cuts are now at the highest level they've been in Realtor.com's data set. So that's what you would need to see really like crashing prices like we are in Austin. So that's a good gauge. Let's see here. Someone requested Salt Lake City. Let's take a look at Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City, we're getting 23% of sellers cutting the price. That's the highest we've seen in any February going back 7 years. That's a good sign. For sale inventory has gone up a lot over the last year. It's almost quadrupled, basically back to normal levels, which given the lower levels of home buyer demand is a good sign. So this is probably a good inventory level for buyers in the market. I expect it to increase though more in the future. All right, everyone. How about, what request did we get here? Ocala, Florida. Let's look at Ocala, Florida. The overall question is, what do I think of Ocala as a living community? And let's actually look at the map here, because I think a lot of you probably don't know where Ocala is. I will show you where it is here on this map here on the Reventure app as we move in. It's being a little slow. I'm going to try to fix that. Hopefully it's not slow for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments about your guys' experience with Reventure app. So we can see Ocala has a fairly high share of inventory. 1.4% of all the homes are on the market right now. But really what I'm interested in is let's look at that house payment as a percentage of median income statistic in Ocala. And let's look at that going back through time. How has that changed in Ocala, where the median household income is $53,000? Well, right now, the median household in Ocala needs to spend 40% of their income to be able to afford a house at today's mortgage interest rates and prices. That was 18% before the pandemic. What do you see in Ocala back in 2007? It went up to 34%, and then what happened? It crashed down to 13% because home prices in Ocala crashed by a lot back in that last downturn. And yeah, we're up in another bubble right now. And this is the issue with Florida, everyone. I mean, like I see so many people say Florida's not going to crash. I mean, just look at the history of Florida's housing market. It's a place that's run by second home buyers and tourist demand. That will not do well in a housing crash. It's not going to do well also in an outlying region like Ocala. And right now we're looking at home prices in Florida. Naples is another one. I mean, Naples is like as expensive now as parts of California. And none of the locals can afford that. I mean, a $600,000 typical home price in Naples is insane. It got up to $430,000 at the peak of the last bubble. And what is that as a percentage of income for the local? I mean, look at this, everyone. 58%. The local home buyer in Naples needs to spend 58% of their income to be able to afford a house. It was 53% at the peak of the last bubble. Boom, crash, went down to 25%. It's going to go down again. And just to close and put the bow on the theme of this video on the migration. Yeah, a lot of cities in the South had good migration statistics in 2021 and 2022. But it seems pretty likely that that's shifting now given the trends in inventory. And don't be surprised after this little kind of winter, early spring surge of people going to Florida. Don't be surprised if in the next 1 to 2 months you see what happened last year happen again, where there's a big drop off in buyer demand and prices continue to go down. Additionally, California's housing market has huge headwinds overall. Even though inventory is low, we're already seeing prices go down by a lot. And the fact that the tech and media sectors are getting crushed in California suggests that that housing market's also going to get crushed, even as some people start to move back there due to normalizing trends in migration. All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to access the data in this video for yourself, go to www.reventureapp.com. Create a free account. I created this application so you guys can, arm yourself with knowledge on the housing market, so you don't get fooled, by realtors telling you that the market's going crazy when it's not. Go to reventureapp.com. See what the story is for yourself and your house.